All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to one of the very first episodes of Rise and Reign. This is an online show that I created to help empower other Christian mom entrepreneurs like myself and yourself to rise up from our challenges so we can reign in our life and business. And I have one of this lady here that I want to have, that we're going to be talking with today is incredible. It's one of those God things where someone comes into your life and then you may like distance for a while and then they come back and you have no idea why, and then all of a sudden you're doing a beautiful episode of a brand new online show that is geared towards helping other Christian moms just be empowered in life and business in their faith, all through the power of God, and having these amazing God-filled businesses. So guys, welcome to Hillary Bennett. She is a mental health coach, and I'm just so excited to bring her on here. And Hillary, just you have no idea, what this means to me for you to be on the show. I had started a podcast actually a couple years ago. Then that's how we originally knew each other. It was not, I mean, it was to help other, mom entrepreneurs, but there was no faith behind it, even though that was a huge part of my life. And at the beginning of this year, I decided to step all out on faith and just go all in for God. And we reconnected. And it's,
Mm.
like the fact that I'm recording, I mean, I don't know when this will air, but this is the first episode I'm recording. Just the fact that you're here with me is just so special. So thank you for being here.
Oh my gosh, you're welcome. I love that we have kind of gone through that journey. And I was in the same place before when I was the guest on your previous podcast. God was a part of my life, but it wasn't an upfront part of my business that people would know about just from, outside looking in. And at the beginning of this year, I took that big leap of faith. And so I just love that God brought us back together. And it's so funny, y'all. We're in this networking event looking at each other like, you look familiar, you sound familiar, your name seems familiar. And finally, Derek, she messaged me a few days later, like, girl, we did a podcast together before. Oh my gosh. And now we're just
Yes.
inseparable. We can't get enough.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, when I looked at that, because I'm notorious for not deleting anything. So I saw that message thread. I was like, wait a minute, wait a minute. I was like, how? That is just, yeah, God so good. So, all right. So, guys, so the episode, or let me just kind of give you guys a background of why I started this show and why I had, Hillary be one of the first episodes for the show, is that there are so many things in my life that have, tripped me up, like, where I'm trying to, I don't know, I've gone through a lot, like a lot of tough things and a lot of things that have stopped other people in the past, either temporarily or permanently, if they wanted to go all the way there, but just so many things where I felt alone in that moment because I didn't have anyone to identify with. But God being God, is like he will use hard situations in your life to help somebody else go through that hard thing too. So that's why on this episode, especially with you being a mental health coach, and I want to, bring attention and bring a like normalize it to where
Mhm.
it's not an icky word. Like it doesn't, mental health doesn't mean crazy, like it's health. And your mental health impacts everything. And I've seen in my own life, and we'll talk about because this episode is about you and your journey and your business and how you're helping other moms too. But it's just really important to me to have these kinds of real conversations about what this looks like and how it can impact your life and how you can get through it. So awesome. So guys, the topic of this episode is empowering your mindset with faith, coping with anxiety and depression as a Christian mom entrepreneur. So, as we were saying, with me and Hillary, we're both on this same journey where we are both women of faith. And yet we were, entrepreneurs. We connected a couple years ago. And then at this, God being God again, like on your particular journey path, on my particular journey, he brought us to that same thing at the beginning of this year. Like, no, it's all in for me. But at the same time, life is still life, things still happen. And so yeah, I just really love that we're having this as one of the first episodes. So to bring it all back to you, tell us a little bit, because I know that we've connected and had, some really great private conversations. So for everybody else out there, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to becoming a mental health coach.
Sure. Um, So I am a mom of two. I have a 6-year-old son and an 8-year-old daughter at the time of this recording. And I think that as all of you would probably nod your heads in agreement, becoming a mother really defined and changed my life and my identity, to say the least.
Right.
And so up until that point, I was very career driven. That was where I held my identity, was in my career. And becoming a mother, that sort of turned it on its head. I was still clinging to that. I was still clinging to, but this is where my identity can be found. And so I found myself really disrupted because I didn't feel comfortable in claiming my identity as a mother for lots of reasons. And I also couldn't any longer feel as though I was capable of claiming my identity by my job.
Right.
And so I went out on this seeking journey. Part of my responsibility in corporate was to coach up and coming leaders to be prepared to take on higher roles in leadership. And so coaching has been a part of what I do for well over a decade. And I really loved that part of being able to let people see that they have everything that they need within them. They have access to those things, and that they really have a lot of power. And, you know, the Lord has given us power. And being able to allow people to see that and harness it, man, it just lit me up. So as I was struggling with this, like, oh my gosh, where's my identity? This doesn't feel comfortable. This doesn't feel comfortable. I'm seeking. I decided, you know, maybe corporate isn't the place for me. And so with a 3-year-old and an infant, decided, actually, no, 2-year-old and an infant, I decided to go to school at night and become certified as a coach.
Wow.
I became certified. Yeah. Isn't that just
As
like
if, 2 little kids wasn't enough.
in all my free time? But that's what we do, right? We move right before we give birth. We move at like 7 months pregnant, and then we decide to go back to school when they're really little. Crazy, crazy people we are.
Yes.
So I became certified as a whole person certified coach. I'm also an associate certified coach through the International Coaching Federation. And for a while, I was kind of trying to do both. I was trying to keep my corporate career. Ladies, listen, I was making 6 figures. I had the best benefits of all time. I had, for everyone who is like millennial and younger, y'all are going to laugh at this. I had a pension. I had a pension.
Right. They're like, what? This is what my grandpa had?
Right. I had a pension. I had an incredible 401k. Like, I could go on and on and on. This job was so good. And they let me work from home. This
Oh,
is
wow.
pre-COVID. They let me work from home. And I was just feeling so distraught over it because it wasn't feeling right. There was no reason on paper why I should leave this job. So for a while, I tried to juggle both. I was like, okay, no problem. I'll create a replacement income. That's a whole nother episode. Before leaving this job. And in January of 2020, I was in a coaching session with another beautiful Christian coach named Robin Shear. She just published a book called Messy Joy. Grab it on Amazon. It's incredible. She was coaching me, and God appeared to me in a vision. And he reached his hand out to me and he said, Hillary, it's time to follow me. Let's go. I gave my 2 weeks notice that day.
Really?
That day, called up my boss and I said, it's time. And so I went into full-time coaching, and I will say there were a lot of iterations. So for us mompreneurs, I want to also normalize the fact that your growth will mean that your business is going to change. And that doesn't mean that you're not good enough. It doesn't mean that you're flaky. All of that self-doubt that comes along with you having to switch up your niche or switch up your offering, that is you growing and learning and really stepping into where God is calling you to be. That is him equipping you. You've been called. That is him equipping you. Okay.
Absolutely, yes.
And so I am still going through the equipping process, but that equipping process kind of happened. So I was doing all sorts of things. I started out coaching women who had taken time off of work and wanting to get back into the workforce. So that's kind of where I was coaching for about 1.5 years. And then COVID happened.
It's like,
And although most stay-at-home moms going back to work during COVID. So that became like an inflection point for me to have to switch things up.
mhm,
In the summer of 2021, I began working as a mental health coach and in a secular way. Um,
mhm,
and just found so much power that there are scientifically proven, research backed methodologies that don't include medication that can help people manage their anxiety and depression.
mhm,
This was really revolutionary for me because in parallel to all of that experience of my coaching, I was going through some true turmoil and trauma in my personal life.
mhm.
So, yes, COVID. I mean, we all felt
Right,
anxiety
yeah,
and
and
depression at
that's
one
awful.
time or another during COVID, right? That was a worldwide trauma that we experienced. I experienced trauma in my marriage and I experienced trauma in my health during that same time.
Mhm, and
And
that's a lot
so,
going on, yeah.
yes, in October of 2020, I ended up going on anti-anxiety medication. And so understanding, and I was also seeing a therapist,
Mhm,
understanding that my toolkit could be broader than those kind of traditional things that we're all sort of aware of was so amazing. And then for me to be able to give back to this community that I really found myself a part of and using the skills that God had given me, it was just like, it felt like it was a match made in heaven. Um, and so now, like I said, in January, I really heard again, God is so good. He
mhm.
gives us messages, He gives us downloads. I feel so blessed that I actually have had experience in which is I've been able to see, I've been able to hear, but He gave me this message like it's time to put me at the center of it all. Because unfortunately, I am a little bit all or nothing. I get some tunnel vision. And so if I'm not saying, hi, I'm a Christian coach, I will leave God completely out of my business. That's work that I'm working on.
Mhm,
It's my brain acting as, it's designed to do, but it doesn't serve me. And so God is
right.
like, if you want me to be a part of your business, you have to shout it from the rooftops. And so
Yes, love that.
it took me a while to be obedient. Let me just say that story about me taking 2 weeks or giving my 2 weeks the day that God told me, God had been nudging me for a while. Do not misunderstand that I am so great at immediate obedience, although the shortened version of my story makes it sound that way.
Oh, yeah, I
That
know
is something
exactly
I'm
what you mean.
continuing to work on.
Mhm,
Yeah. So now, a whole separate conversation is the difference between, a psychiatric nurse or a psychiatric practitioner, a therapist or a counselor, and a coach. These are different roles, and we have our own lanes to stay in. As a coach, my lane is not medication. My
mhm,
lane is not diagnosing. My lane is not dealing with past trauma. And so when I say that I am a mental health coach helping Christian women break the bondage of their anxiety and depression without medication, please hear me. It is not because I don't think medication can be helpful. I am on medication myself, and I have found it to be so critical in my own mental health journey.
I've been on in the past before too. It's
Yeah.
absolutely
But this is just one additional way that you can find support, that you can find treatment. And it's a way that's kind of new. The research is new, the profession is rather new. And so, really excited to be a part of pioneering this new way of supporting people
yeah.
with mental health.
What I really like about it and the fact that you do come at it, from this Christian perspective is and then like you said, medication does have its place when it's needed. Therapy has its place when it's needed. Like I have my weekly therapy session today. Like, yes, that is an important part of, kind of like processing things from your past, especially traumas. But it is very much not necessarily past focused, but trying to move past the
Mhm,
past.
mhm.
Right? Whereas with from my understanding, like, with mental health coaching, especially when you do have that Christian perspective, is processing how to, like move from your present into your future,
Yes.
irregardless of what's going on around you in a way that, honors God, honors yourself, honors your mission and your calling, your purpose in life. Like I'm getting goosebumps even just talking about it because I believe that, when you do make those bold claims, like, God will return that just in as much boldness, as far as the impact you'll create, or, like, even with income wise, like it could just be, like they said, it's just in all things, it will be like over in abundance. So I think it's super important because, it is different than being a business owner who is a Christian than being a Christian business owner. It comes with a lot more, like, my son, he's 8 and he loves Spider-Man. And it's like, that saying in Spider-Man, like, with great power comes great responsibility.
Mhm. Yep.
That's biblical.
It sure is. It sure is.
Like, if that's in the Spider-Verse and the universe and the
I
kingdom,
know.
like, that's, yeah.
That's like Jesus talking to the disciples. Let's go.
Right, exactly. So I love how you answered that. So now, like, you were kind of referencing this a little bit in regards to yourself, but like, how have you seen anxiety and depression affect, Christian moms, or I guess why be in that lane, and what kind of drew you to want to work with that, those type of women specifically?
Yeah. Well, obviously, personal experience, right? And I've kind of shared a little bit about that.
Amen for that. God uses that. Like, everything happens for a reason. And
Yeah.
it took me a long time to come to grips with that, but it's amazing. So yes, keep going.
Yeah. So yes, personal experience. And there was also, for a while I was a business strategy coach. And that's when Derek and I first got together a few years back. And what
Mhm.
I found interesting is that although these women hired me to help them with their business and accountability, um, we often talked about emotional and mental health blockages, like anxiety,
Mhm.
anxiety about,
Huge one for me personally, like, huge one. I'd still struggle with. Yeah.
yeah. And so, it took me a while to wise up and be like, oh, I've been a mental health coach all along. That's just not what I've been marketing myself
Yeah.
as. And so being able to see it from kind of that practitioner side. And lastly, the data is pretty striking. So, um, these are very rough numbers, ladies, so bear with me, but roughly half of the population in the US is Christian.
Mhm.
Roughly half of that population are female. And so when we look at like the numbers, there's well over 20 million women in the US today dealing with anxiety that are Christian.
Wow.
40 million that are not Christian.
Right, yeah.
This is a big deal.
Mhm.
Anxiety is a universal human experience.
Mhm.
Now, whether it is something that gets in your way or not, that's kind of where we delineate, like, should you be reaching out for the appropriate kind of help that you need? Is
Right.
it is it keeping you small? Like, that's usually you won't be living your life to the fullest the way that you would without anxiety,
Mhm.
because anxiety can be good. That's probably a whole nother conversation.
Mhm.
Maybe we'll get to it later, but anxiety was actually given to us as a gift from God to protect us. Still
Mhm.
today, anxiety can protect us from dangers that are around us. Now, back in the day when the danger was a saber-toothed tiger, our dangers today are a little bit different,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
But the anxiety is there as like a little warning bell, a little
Mhm.
warning light. That's really, really good. We don't want to live a life without anxiety, because
Mhm.
that warning bell alerts us.
Right, yeah.
Maybe we don't want to be doing this. Maybe we should think this through. Maybe we should, look at a different option, whatever the case may be. It's when anxiety goes a step further than that, infiltrating your life and preventing you from doing things that you really want to be doing, is typically, at the ground level, what anxiety looks like when
Mhm.
it's in your life. So personally, I've seen it. I've seen it, in with my clients. And then, yeah, when you look at the data, it's like, wow, that's a lot of people that are dealing with this. And yes, the conversation has become more mainstream because of COVID.
Mhm.
God can use terrible things for good. And I think
Oh,
one
yeah,
of the good things that has come out of COVID is that we are having more frank and open conversations about
yeah,
mental health.
totally
Um,
agree.
but I will also say bad Bible contributes hugely to anxiety. And I
Mhm.
think more, I might say this because I'm a woman, but I feel like that's put more on women than on men.
Mhm.
Bad Bible keeps women small. Bad Bible holds women to a standard that feels unattainable. We think of the Proverbs 31 woman, like who has read Proverbs 31 and felt like, yes, I am
It's
her.
me, right?
Versus who has read Proverbs 31 woman, the Proverbs 31, and been like, oh my gosh, how in the world? I
Yeah.
cannot even, I'm dying right now. And she's like, I'm
Mm,
saying the first few words of several different spiraling thoughts that we can go
mhm,
down by reading the Bible in a way that's like, you are not good enough. You
mhm,
need to be here in order to be accepted, loved, forgiven, grace, which that is bad Bible.
right.
That's bad Bible. So not only is it just something that's hitting us as society as a whole, I think there is tradition of interpreting scripture wrong that actually places anxiety onto us as Christian women. And then we're like, but the peace of God is there. He's told us not to be anxious in anything.
Mhm.
And yet we feel
And
anxious.
then yeah, and yeah, we
And
do.
so I want to help bridge that gap. I want to help women actually find the peace of God because holy moly, it's such a gift and
Yeah.
it's free for the taking, but we got to create that bridge and we got to walk across it. And we have not, at least I have not been taught that by my family, by my church, or by society.
Yeah, and the other critical piece, and I think that's kind of like the difference is that, when it comes to discerning, bad Bible or just discerning just different interpretations of events and things is that personal relationship with God and just, like him speaking to you and kind of, like just that, like
Mhm.
treating them like a friend.
Yeah.
Well, he's our counselor, he's our consoler, he's our father, and just treating him in those instances where we do feel inadequate or anxious or worried. Like, yeah, there's several times where I've had to tell myself, like, God is not giving me the spirit of fear. Like this is a daily thing, like just because, and that's something that something too is like just because we're out front with being, these Christian women, or these Christian business owners, doesn't mean that we don't have experienced some of these same struggles or have to actively daily, live out this life because it is, it's a lifestyle, it's not like you reach this destination, it's like, ah, I'm a Christian, I did it. And no, like this, and especially when you're bold with it, there's so much that can come with it and comes against you. And like you said, it's that, is it going to stop you or is it going to fuel you and propel you forward?
Mhm.
I am a huge proponent of failing forward. I told my son, like, you'll never fail if you learn something from that experience,
Oh,
so
amen.
just, right, but just, yeah, just kind of reframing events and things and using it for, yeah, to propel you forward instead of to stop you, which it stopped me in the past, and, I'm not
Mhm.
perfect. It has in the
Oh, it
past.
stopped me in the past too. Yeah.
Right, and is, one of the reasons why I think, doing this show was so important to me, and I really feel like that's why God put it on my heart and how he's gonna use all of those experiences that I went through, to kind of, on a more broader spectrum, let other people know that, number 1, you're not alone, and number 2, you can get through this, and number 3, here, I'm the way, So, so I think that's so important. I'm just so excited that we're doing this. So one thing that I think is really important, as far as living, rising up from challenges is that rise part. Rise is a verb, like it's action behind it. It's not just saying, okay, well, I'm going to get out of bed today and I'm going to do something. No, it's actually getting up out of bed, taking a shower, doing your hair, putting on something that isn't yoga pants and a t-shirt, like doing things that will fuel you in your life so that way you can keep moving forward. But as far as your experience personally, the clients you've worked with, friends, whatever, like what are some of those practical strategies that you could help some of the Christian moms or some of the women, whoever they are, that are listening or watching? What can you, like, what are some strategies that you would say that they could use to overcome like anxiety and depression in your case?
Yeah. Yeah. So first off, I will say anxiety and depression, they are so complex.
Mm-hmm.
So when someone wants to come and work with me, I have a pretty rigorous intake, just to kind of have our first conversation because I want to understand if it's actually safe for you to be working with me as a coach. I kind of talked about where my lane is. My lane is not diagnoses, it's not medication, it's not dealing with past trauma. For people who are living in that space of moderate to severe anxiety or depression, that's outside of my lane.
Mm-hmm.
And so how anxiety and depression manifests for someone who has a severe case versus someone who has a mild case versus moderate, some combination of both, everyone's experience is going to look and feel different. So I first just want to say that there's no Band-Aid that we can just give everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to say that our mental health, our thoughts, the way that we talk to ourselves is the biggest weapon that the devil can use against us.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want
Absolutely.
to say that one more time. Like that inner dialogue, your mind is the biggest weapon the devil can use against you.
Yep.
Yes, there are physical things, there are worldly things that can get in your way that feels like spiritual warfare, and very well may be.
Mm-hmm.
But it's insidious when it's inside of your brain.
Yes, exactly. And it's just like that reverse exponential
Oof.
impact. Like it will impact everything. And
Yes.
it's funny.
Everything else in your life can be perfect. And yet, if the devil has hold inside of you, inside of your mind, you're toast. You're
Mm-hmm.
toast.
Yep.
So I kind of start with those things to just kind of say everyone is going to feel different, and this is also a really big deal. If you are suffering from anxiety, from negative self-talk, from low self-esteem, this is not a small thing. You probably are trying to minimize it in order to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my biggest tip. We need to stop minimizing. So I talked about we have to build the bridge and then we have to walk over it. Derica, when you were saying like rise is a verb, like let's rise, that's the walking over. And
Mm-hmm.
so often we try to walk before the bridge is built. And that is phrases like pull yourself up by your bootstraps, which I don't even understand, like the mental image of how one would do that. But this idea that mental fortitude means like just pushing through, white knuckling it.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, while that might give you that jolt forward to be able to hop across that distance where the bridge should be,
Mm-hmm.
in the long term, that's not sustainable. You're
Exactly.
not
Yep.
actually addressing what's going on. And so the first thing that I would encourage anyone to do is to kind of take a moment. It's always really good to take a breath because we don't breathe. Like right now, I'm excited and I'm talking, so I'm not breathing very much. Take a nice breath. How am I feeling right now? Like, what am I thinking and how am I feeling?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm feeling sad, disappointed, frustrated. And in those emotions, instead of just feeling guilty about those emotions and shutting them down or understanding that those emotions don't serve you and shutting them down,
Mm-hmm.
I feel sad right now. And I like to put actually like a hand on my heart or a hand on my belly. I feel sad right now. And that's okay. It is okay to feel any emotion.
Yep.
Jesus, and I truly think this, God took human form for so many reasons, but one of the reasons is that he actually showed us that it is okay to feel the wide array of emotions that he built our bodies perfectly to be able to engage with. Jesus
Right.
engaged with difficult emotions all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look at this is like God in flesh, and yet he's in the, garden just totally distraught over the fact of going to the cross when like that was his plan all along, and he's the perfect one, and he's still feeling distraught.
Mhm.
It is okay to feel these feelings. So that's step number 1. What are you feeling? Step number 2, it is okay to be feeling those feelings.
Right.
And that could be thoughts too, y'all. It might not just be feelings. Maybe the thought is like a really disparaging thought about yourself. I am not enough. I
Mhm.
am lazy. I'm fat. I'm ugly. I'm stupid. I rebuke all of those things in the name of Jesus. And I know every single woman that is watching right now or listening has said at least one of those things to herself, probably within the last 7 days.
Oh my goodness, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Sooner than that.
That thought, you can say, I am thinking that I'm not enough. It's understandable why I'm thinking that, but that does not come from God. So it's all
Mhm.
about this moment of acceptance for yourself, giving yourself space to be.
Yeah.
and accepting that space. And that is how we start to build that bridge to walk over.
Mhm.
So identifying our feelings, accepting our feelings, and that's when we're able to turn to the Lord.
Yes.
Lord God, I am feeling sad. And then I feel guilty for being sad because you have blessed me. And so
Mhm.
now I'm feeling guilty. I know that you've shown me through you coming to earth as a human that it is okay to feel those things.
Yeah.
But Lord, I'm struggling. Whatever that looks like for you, really sharing with the Lord what it is you're feeling. Yes, does he already know this? Yes. But part of that process of prayer, that's a relationship building with God, but that's also you allowing your body to process some of that emotion,
True, right?
right? And then allowing yourself to receive God's grace, receive God's love. I really love to end my prayers saying something like, Lord, I release this to you and
Mhm.
I receive your love.
I
And so
love
actually verbalizing the transaction of giving him my
Mhm.
difficulty and receiving his love and grace, forgiveness, compassion, whatever it is that he's giving
Yeah,
you in
a
that
lot of
moment,
times, yeah, sometimes
right?
it's just peace. Uh-huh.
In return. Because sometimes it's hard to feel that exchange, right? Like
Mhm.
the Bible tells us to lay our burdens onto Jesus, like take his yoke, exchange the yokes, y'all. Um,
Right.
it's so like, okay, great. That
That's
sounds
totally a
wonderful.
meme.
And how exactly do I do that?
Right, exactly right.
If we practice the motions, which can be in prayer, like that can help us learn, that can help us
Mhm.
be in that posture of being able to exchange our yoke with the Lord's. And then you take action. So we're building the bridge by acknowledging how we're thinking and feeling, accepting how we're thinking and feeling, turning to the Lord, and then taking action. There's going to be this space in that taking action where I love adding a little check in. What do I need? There are usually 3 buckets. For some people, there's a 4th bucket of needs. What do I need physically? What do I need emotionally or mentally? What do I need
Mhm.
socially? These are the 3 buckets. Sometimes the 4th bucket is spiritually. That kind of depends. For some of us, the spiritual bucket is all throughout. For others,
Yeah,
it's own.
I
So
totally
you
get
do
that,
you,
yeah.
right?
Right.
3 or 4 buckets. I love the story of Elijah when God called him to share, the prophecy of what was going to happen, and people were just like,
Mhm.
meh, like I'm going to
Mhm.
stay worshiping these false idols, meh. And
Mhm.
Elijah gets so frustrated and is like, God, I've done everything that you've told me to do and nothing's happening. Just kill me now. He's
Yeah.
throwing a tantrum. I've thrown a tantrum as an
Oh
adult
my
many
goodness.
times.
I
This is
had
not
I had that
going
Elijah moment, like, a couple months ago, like,
right.
"Lord, I am doing this. What is going on?"
What did God tell Elijah to do? Elijah, my love, eat a snack and take a nap. What do I need physically? The Lord has shown
Mm,
us that sometimes this is a really viable question that we need to ask
yes.
ourselves. What do we need physically? Elijah needed to eat and sleep. Maybe you
Mhm.
need to go to the bathroom. We disconnect from our body. I mean, like I say that, but we disconnect from our body so much. How many of you have been sitting like in the car or at your desk, like jiggling because
Yeah.
you've got to go so bad, but you're like not paying attention to it
Mhm. And you
until
kinda
it's like,
push
I
forward,
gotta
like you were
go.
saying, like yeah.
So
Mhm.
it can be something just as simple as like taking a sip of water, going to the bathroom, uncrossing your legs, opening up your chest, taking a breath. Like, what do I need physically? What do I need emotionally? That's a tough question, but that's some sophisticated work that you can do in service of your mental health to be
Mhm.
able to learn how to support yourself and to allow God to support yourself instead of kind of having to reach out to the world to do
Right.
that. And then socially, we were made for community. We were not made for isolation. And recently, the US Surgeon General actually identified loneliness and isolation as a national endemic.
Really?
Okay.
Wow.
So sometimes we need to be in community with someone. Sometimes
Mm,
we need a hug, man. There's
yeah.
so much other science as backing why a hug is really good for you, but sometimes we just need that. And so when you identify your needs, that's one place to start to take action that isn't that white knuckling, bootstrapping mentality that can actually do
Hiding.
more damage,
Yeah.
right? So starting there, and when you get into that place where you've checked in with yourself, you've accepted and loved yourself as Jesus models for us, you've
Mhm.
turned to the Lord, you've exchanged burdens with him, taken on his light burden,
Yes.
and then you start taking action, especially if you do my, my little trick of starting the action with what do I need.
Mhm.
That can really help you work through anxiety or depressive thoughts in the moment.
Mm.
So I feel like I just talked for like an hour in answer to
No,
just
but it was
one question, my love. But as
no,
you
actually,
can tell, I'm
you
passionate about this stuff.
but no, that was exactly what it needed to be because you just brought attention to the fact it was just so many good things, and I wish I would have kind of like wrote down some little nuggets. But just the fact that there you do have power within you to address these things in the moment where you're not having to go off to, get a pill or for some people go off and get a drink or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you have power in that moment, but also like realizing that even in that moment, it's a process. You don't go just from, okay, I'm gonna decide to feel better, I'm gonna feel better. Like, no, like how you, I mean, the way you said it, it was so eloquent in my head. It was almost kind of like you're like listening with with two separate minds because I'm listening and processing what you're saying, but in the back of my head, I'm also like feeling and pulling out these nuggets that I just know are going to be so powerful for people, because in this digital world, like that's what people digest. They digest these quick steps. And the way that you laid out that process is giving me goosebumps talking about it, but just how you laid it out, like it's a very simple thing, coming to that awareness, accepting it, partnering with God, that even that transaction piece, just like, you know, um, kind of yeah, like it's almost like a systematic thing, and the last part is that action piece and
Mhm.
realizing that you can't, like it's not complete until you get there. But then I love too what you did by like it's not just action, because then you're like, okay, take action. What does that mean?
Yeah.
But deducing it down to that first step, like what do I need?
Mhm.
Because there is, like, whenever you're in a moment of distress, anxiety, panic, worry, fear, whatever it is, you're lacking something that is making you feel that way. That's not the ultimate, that particular emotion. I forget. You probably know what I'm trying to say, and I'm probably gonna butcher try to even articulate what I'm thinking, but it's like that secondary emotion,
Yes, the
it's
secondary
not.
emotion. It's like you first feel sad, and then all of a sudden you feel guilty for being sad. So now you have these 2 really difficult emotions, and
Mhm,
this is a very prominent thing for, um, women in Western society, for Christian in Western society, because we are aware of our blessings. Oh, so good. But when our awareness of our blessings and our gratitude end up shaming
mm,
ourselves. So that
mhm.
how dare you feel sad? You're so blessed.
Right.
That's actually like, you guys, that's the enemy using something so good and just twisting it
Trying to twist it,
nasty.
yes, which is
Mm,
what he does,
twisting it
yes.
nasty. And so
Mhm,
yes, there are these steps, these 3 steps that, I can talk about in less than 5 minutes and seem easy. I will say though, sometimes it's just that you have to practice step 1.
mhm,
You've shut down your emotions because they're too difficult, they get in the way too much, you haven't been taught. Being able to simply identify your emotions is the first step, and you might have to just start there and not worry about the rest of the steps. That's okay,
right.
that's normal. So if someone is like, okay, I'm going to try to use this process tomorrow or the next time I feel this, let me just tell you that it can be a process in and of itself, being able to learn how to do these things. Um, right. Like actually saying, like, it's okay to feel sad right now.
Mhm.
That could
Yeah,
take some practice.
yeah, absolutely. That was a thing that I kinda had to work through even as in my own therapy journey, or, like, it was a point where it was hard to even just accept compliments, kinda thing, like,
Mm,
it is a like, I am good at this particular thing, but it took it and it's work, but it's just like when you do the work and you're diligent and you do kind of like be kind to yourself and
yes.
love on yourself for wherever along that spectrum you lie. And sometimes, it's like and not beat yourself up if you fall or you
Mhm,
stumble,
mhm.
you
I
know?
mean, the Lord tells us to love our neighbors as ourselves. And if we were really honest,
We
that would
would
mean we were
definitely
treating our
focus.
neighbors pretty despicably.
Yes.
that we weren't giving our neighbors very much grace, that we were
Mhm.
saying some pretty rude things to our neighbors.
Mhm. Yeah.
When the Lord tells us that, he's assuming that we are loving ourselves after the example of how he loves us,
Mhm.
which I don't know about you, I do not love myself that way.
Right, yeah.
And so as you're starting on this or continuing on your mental health journey, just giving that moment of reframe. So, okay, Hillary just laid out these really simple tips and we have the power within us. Okay, but wait, how can you approach starting to learn and implement these things with the grace and love of God? The love that he assumes you're giving to yourself because he's telling you to give it to your neighbors and he wants you to actually be nice to those people.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
Yeah.
"You too." Dude, yeah, it's funny. I'm even as, my son is, like I said, he's 8 years old, and because of my own mental health journey, I'm very, like, aware of his mental health journey. And even in his young age, he went through a really hard time when me and his dad got divorced, but there are times where, yeah, he'll talk negative to himself. So now we have this thing, and I invite, everyone who's watching or listening to try it. I mean, try it with yourself, try it with your kids, but it's like if he says something like, "Oh, I'm not good at this." I was like, "Okay." So, hey, for every bad thing I hear you say about yourself, you have to say 2 good things about yourself.
Yeah.
And like, and I was like, "No, quick, say I'm quick, because you're very quick to say something bad." It's like, there are so many good things. I was like, I'm already on number 10, like, in my head, like, I can already think of all these good things about yourself. So for every negative thing you think, you need to reframe that. And, like the same way the enemy tries to twist and pervert, certain things of our own thinking, you just kind of like flip that back on its head, turn it back around. Like, no, I am a successful entrepreneur. Like, I am a mom. Like, I've raised my children. I cooked dinner last night. Like, there's all these good things and actually I did cook a really good dinner last night. But
Yeah.
but it's but it's things like that, like mentally and just cognizantly, girl, I don't even how you supposed to say
Cognitively, I
it?
think is what you were searching for, but I love making up new words, so go for
Right,
it.
right, hello. But, just making those diligent efforts to, um to reframe the narrative,
Yeah.
you know?
And I love that you brought up, doing that exercise with your son. This is something that you can do with your kids as well. And I think you probably all know when you become the teacher, it like instills it to a whole deeper level for
Mhm.
yourself.
Yeah.
And so when you feel your child or see your child dealing with, difficult self-talk or difficult emotion, maybe they're just acting out,
Mhm.
starting with talking about feelings and emotions. Like, let's teach our children how to identify that easier so that we don't have to spend so much time on step one. Like,
Yeah.
what does sadness feel like? What does anger feel like? And oh, by the way, it's okay to
Mhm.
feel angry. Anger is especially one that I think we've been told it's not okay to be angry. That's not true.
Right.
What's not okay is behavior that you choose because you're angry. That's what's
Yes.
not okay. That
Oh my
feeling
goodness.
anger is okay. So, yeah,
Mhm.
so going there with your kids, helping them to identify, that's going to create so much closeness. Y'all, if you haven't read the book Good Inside by Dr. Becky and you're a parent, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. I love this book. But it's all about connection first, and being able to see what your child is going through and identifying emotions is one of the strongest
Mhm.
ways you can make connection and build connection with your child. And that will also help you, reinforce like, oh, this is what anger feels like. This is what sadness feels like. This is what it looks like. And that will help you too. So anyway, that's a whole nother episode, I'm sure. But Derek, I love that you
Yeah.
brought that because we can become teachers of these tools before mastering them ourselves.
Mhm. And it helps us
So
in that mastery process.
absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So I know we're coming towards the end of our time together. So before we go, I just want to make sure that everyone knows, where exactly they can find you. So, yeah, how can people connect with you? Like, how can they work with you if they want to even, talk about using you as their own mental health coach? What does all that look like?
Yeah. So these days I spend most of my time on Facebook. I would love you to come be friends with me. I'm Hillary Love Bennett. Um, and I have a Facebook group called Faith Filled and Free
Mm.
Christian Female Entrepreneurs Free from Anxiety. It's a new group, so there's just a small amount of us in there, but I'm really excited about how God is going to use this group to help fill all of those buckets,
Mhm.
especially that social bucket. And if you join that group, you get a free gift, which is 5 different ways to relieve anxiety right now. Um, which again, like sometimes just having those tools in our toolbox, like we are all going to experience anxiety, whether you actually have, you know,
Yeah, that
an
diagnosis.
anxiety disorder, or whether you're just human and you're experiencing anxiety. They're great tools to have. So come find me on Facebook, join my Facebook group, get that great little freebie. And I do offer coaching. So I offer a blended care model. So what that looks like is there is a digital course that goes hand in hand with one-on-one coaching. And that way you're able to learn on your own, and we get to go deeper together. So you're really getting a lot more value for the one-on-one time, which is what's so expensive in coaching.
Mhm.
And so I've got a really great program that kind of takes you through the different levels of being able to cultivate higher quality mental health and
Mhm.
have that be sustainable. Uh, yeah, so those are kind of the two ways to get engaged with me right now.
Hey, well, perfect. So I will, for wherever you guys are watching this from, social media, YouTube, or if you're listening to this on the podcast, I will have the links to find Hillary wherever she's at online, especially to those offers and especially to her group. Like she was saying, connection is really, really important. It's, it was important in the body of Christ. He had disciples, that connection. He had a community. And there's a mutual community me and Hillary share. Like God's put it on my heart to build a Rise and Rain community behind this show and just really, cultivate, these deeper connections where we can all support each other and be there for each other and uplift each other and help grow each other's businesses and just do this God-filled life together. So, Hillary, thank you so much for being here. I know that this is going to just be an episode that's going to be really special for always for me because for me this is like the beginning of this new phase of life with me for me, and I'm so happy that you're a part of it. So, again, I've had goosebumps like 3 or 4 times from this episode. But yeah, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for joining, and we will see you next time on the next episode of Rise and Rain. Bye.